Yep.
So this is our second live Q&A Let's Talk Teaching. As some of you know, what we want to do is just have the opportunity for us to talk as fellow educators from all sorts of different settings around the world, and really just have the chance to be able to hear from each other and share good practice, and have the opportunity to maybe discuss some of our challenges and see if people have solutions or suggestions. Last month we had some really interesting ideas that I think some of us found quite thought-provoking, so it would be lovely to see if we have any more of the same sort of ideas today, things that can really make us think. So I know we have teachers here with us from all around the Commonwealth. If you are able to drop an introduction into the chat, it would be great, or do feel free at any point, let me just move my slide on, to raise your hand in Zoom, or to unmute, or to type in the chat. Whatever way of sharing that makes you most comfortable is fine with us. Okay, it's nice to hear voices or see comments. So what we would like to have a think about today, let me just admit a couple more contributors. What I would like us to think about today is our own practice. So it can be really easy to get insular in teaching. If you are one person in a classroom with a lot of students, it can be really quite an isolating job, can't it? So it would be fantastic if we had the opportunity to talk to people who were in our position. So do we have any successes? Do we have any difficulties? Oh, and hi to anybody who's live on Facebook with us now. Thank you. So let's see. Do we have, from the last few weeks, the last month, maybe even yesterday, do we have any successes to celebrate? Anything where you've been in a lesson, you've been with your students, and you've thought, that went well, that was something that I can be proud of. I've gone home feeling good about that. I'm just going to give you a few moments to really think, is there something that you feel that we could celebrate? It doesn't have to be anything huge. Just anything that has given you a sense of satisfaction would be lovely to hear. I'm going to stop talking for a moment. Do feel free to raise your hand, type in the chat, or unmute if you've got something to share. Hello to anybody who's just joined us. We are just giving people the opportunity to reflect on their practice over the last couple of weeks. Is there anything that they have been proud of, anything that you would like to share as a success? It doesn't have to be a big thing, but let's celebrate our small victories. Just give it a few more seconds. You can raise your hand. You can drop into the chat. You can unmute if you'd like to talk out loud. Sometimes that's easiest, whatever works for you in your setting right now. So I have something that I'd like to celebrate today, if it helps stimulate those brain cells. So every year in my subject, I have to send a sample of learner work away to an external moderator who checks that the work that I have awarded marks to is appropriate, and that I haven't just said everybody gets full marks, which would be tempting otherwise, I think. And I've been doing this for a long time. Back in the old days, I used to have to post papers off in an envelope, and they would get posted and it would take a long time. Now in the digital age, everything gets done electronically, which has its advantages, but it's quite nerve-wracking, I think, for people who've been teaching as long as I have to change their ways. So every year when we get to around Easter, I get really nervous that I'm going to send off my work and that the external moderator will turn around and say, what is this? This is horrendous. What have you done? And I every year I get scared because I'm human, and that's what happens, isn't it? That we worry about being judged by others. Well, I know that I do. So this year, I have tried to mitigate my feelings of nervousness. I've tried to be as efficient and organized as possible. I've tried to send my work off significantly earlier than the deadline so that I'm not having last minute panics, and I've tried to organize everything in the most detailed way possible so that the external moderator can just look at it and see how efficient I am. I don't feel efficient, but it helps me to be organized. So this morning I had an email message to say that everything was fine, that my sample was great, and that they agreed with all my marks. So that's my small victory for today, or for the year really, because now I'll be worrying about next year's 2024. We'll start eating away at my worry areas, I reckon, for the next 12 months or so. So that's something that I'm really proud of today. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to share that they're really proud of? You can unmute. We can have a talk, or you can type it in the chat. It would be lovely to hear. Anybody had a learner give them any interesting feedback? Hang on.
And it can be even just a really small success. It can be something that a learner in your classroom might have also achieved something, or just got something. It was that light bulb moment as well. So do share some of those moments as well.
I think those are the moments that we really that teachers thrive on, aren't they? Those
Absolutely.
are the moments when the students get something, or sometimes when they say thank you and they mean it. That's really useful. Oh, we have a lovely comment here from Jillifak from Cameroon. Hi, thank you for giving us the comment, Jillifak. So you said, my students use a lot of analogy to explain how they understood each concept. Thought you're proud because they haven't been doing this before. Oh, thank you so much for that. That's a really lovely comment. I like the idea that they've explained the ideas using analogy as well. It can be really satisfying, can't it, to see that progress in your learners. Thank you so much for sharing that one. It's often a really rewarding thing to see students understanding something and sharing those ideas in a great way. Thank you so much for that, Jillifak. Does anybody else have a success that they'd like to celebrate, or are we all waiting to move on to the things that sometimes can be troubling for us, something that might be a little bit more difficult?
Okay. Often enough, sometimes when it comes to celebrating something, we do get a bit nervous actually sharing something as well, because often it's easier to share, this didn't go so well, and why it didn't go so well as well. But this is also a moment to celebrate your success. And so thank you so much, Dilifak, for sharing what you have done as well. And it is important to share, you know, the good points as well.
Yeah, we need as educators, we need to be able to embrace our positives, don't we? But perhaps this one might be a little bit easier in some ways. Challenges. Do we have any challenges to discuss? Yeah. I have had an emailed comment through from somebody who wasn't sure if their internet connection would work, but I'll just give us a moment to see if there's anything that we'd like to share. I know last week we had some comments about working with big classes, children across different stages, and managing those in the classroom, which was a really interesting point. So if anybody has a challenge, would like to hear it. I'm just going to spend a moment typing out the comment that somebody emailed to me while I give you some thinking time. Thank you.
the challenge that you share can be something that you might be facing now, or you can even think about maybe potentially that you can see a potential challenge as well.
So
and you would like to support with that too.
Sorry, Priya. I'm just going to type into the chat the comment that I had via email.
Oh, okay.
So everybody can see it. It might be easy to read. I'll read it out as well. So via email, I think they have asked to remain anonymous. I have to return results to some students today, and while some results were good, not all learners will be pleased, which I think is the diplomatic way of saying not everybody was very successful. Do you have tips on motivating these learners? So I thought that was actually a really interesting question, because I know that I've been in a situation where I've had to give results back to a whole group of students, and not everybody can achieve the highest marks. And I know that some of my students are really quite competitive. Even between each other, they have competitions about who gets the highest mark, and they take it quite seriously. So those students who don't always get the highest marks or haven't done as well as they would have wanted, they can find things difficult. And I think that's the same for our contributor here. So I wondered, do we as a group have tips for motivating those learners who maybe have achieved scores that they're not especially pleased with? Does anybody have a suggestion for our contributor? Again, you can raise your hand, you can type it in the chat, you can unmute. I wonder if we can just have some suggestions for this teacher. James has given us a comment as well. We'll come back to our previous question then, James, and have a look at yours. Thank you. I am having a hard time between my work and teaching. I have an hour with them, but this usually reduces to about 25 minutes because of my basic schedule. That sounds tricky. So you're having time pressures, James, with your class. Is that what you mean? So you have an hour with them and you have about 25 minutes. Is that standard in your setting to have an hour? Is it unusual to be reduced to 25 minutes, or is it something perhaps that would be a concern moving forwards?
With your question again?
Yes. Is it something that you're going to encounter for the foreseeable future, only having 25 minutes with your students? So you normally have an hour, but you've only got 25 minutes. Is that the concern?
Yes, that's my concern, because looking for ways how I can help them with the 35 minutes that is missing. Yeah. How I can compensate them, how I can compensate for that 35 minutes. That's why I want to handle now.
Yeah, that sounds difficult. So my first question would be, have you done our planning course? Because I think if the smaller your time, the more rigorous your planning will have to be. So if you can condense your the key points that you want them to take away down into your 25 minutes, then perhaps you can reduce any excess time that you don't necessarily need. Maybe you can find a way to deliver those key points to them in the 25 minutes and just hit the highlights of the points without taking too long. So I think I would be looking at a long-term plan. Where do you want them to be over perhaps 6 or 12 weeks? What do they need to know? And then I would work backwards and think about how I can plan that into much smaller chunks, and what are the essential learning points. Because I think you're right, 25 minutes is going to be difficult, isn't it? So you need to just make sure that you've looked at the essential moments. So I can recommend our planning course on Teach2030.com. If you haven't done that already, that might be a useful tool for you. Priya, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's a really great suggestion that you've put in place as well. And the time pressures are always really hard because you've got a certain amount of content to cover as well. I think you're right to mention the planning course as well. And there are some other strategies active strategies you could also might need to revisit, James, that might help you. One of them, so to support you with maybe independent learning, there is turn talk could be quite interesting. So maybe getting the students to maybe discuss some elements, or when they're working independently elsewhere. I don't know if that is the case where you could as well. But there could be some practical strategies that you could revisit from the courses to help you as well. But certainly I can see that what the challenge is, that you're stating there as well, too.
Am I right in thinking, Priya, that Turn Talk is coming up in your workshop? Is that next week?
Absolutely, yes.
Fantastic.
It's good that you mentioned that. It will be in our workshop next week as well. So hopefully there might be something from there in terms of open-ended questions that can probably help deliver a little bit more content or more information that way too as well, that could be discussed between you, between the learners as well, most definitely, so they can take a little bit more ownership.
Thank you, Priya. Does that help, James? Would you be able to perhaps attend the workshop next week and see if the Turn Talk helps?
Yes, usually I always attend the workshop, so I really learned especially what you said, the planning aspect, and what Priya just said about maybe the content area, where we can make a little bullet point of what exactly we want to for the students to learn. So I like that point, and I think I will try to copy that and try to include that in my teaching also.
Lovely. Thank you so much, James. I hope that can be helpful. I think we are coming towards the end of our time now. If anybody does have a further question or comment, do feel free to unmute or hand up or write in the chat. But it's been lovely having 15 minutes with everybody today. And as ever, can I recommend that you like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, like us on Instagram. We do have our workshop next Tuesday, 3 o'clock GMT with Priya, and you have a co-host for next week, Priya?
Yes, we do, and that's Hamid from Nigeria, so really pleased as well to have our Teach 2030 ambassador joining us as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you now.
Thank you.
See you next week.